Hello, everybody. I'm Lori Hines with Just Among Friends, and welcome to another episode where we have guest speakers, both Christians and Jews, who speak on a variety of topics, all related to the same mission, which is to cultivate hearts to align with the Jewish people and the land of Israel with no hidden agenda. We have a very special guest here today. But before we start, I just want to do a quick screen share to show you who are the upcoming speakers, and then we'll come back and introduce today's speaker and hear from him. So bear with me as I do a screen share. All right. So next Sunday, we're going to be having Charles Pullman, a local Texas person, who will be speaking on a changing landscape, Israel and abroad. You will not want to miss that. I heard Charles speak in person, and he was part of a team of speakers, and he was the only one who garnered a standing ovation. So please join us, Charles Pullman. Then we'll hear from Ruth Isaac from the Shema Institute out of Belgium. And then followed by Ruth will be live, Rabbi Tuli Wise, the founder and director of Israel 365. He'll be joining us live from Israel. So welcome, everybody. Today's speaker is Marc Provisor, Security Project Director of One Israel Fund from Israel. He'll be speaking to us today. He's actually in New York City, and we'll find out why he's in New York City today on this episode. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Marc. How are you?
Doing good, thank God.
Yay, wonderful. So Ann Stacy is one of our co-hosts with Texans for a Safe Israel, as is Mike Isley. We are the three co-hosts of this show. Mike Isley has Texans for Israel. I'm going to turn the mic over to Ann. Ann is going to introduce Marc and tell us how we all met Marc, how it started with her. She knew Marc before any of us. So Ann, tell us about your meeting with Marc Provisor.
Well, I'm really not, there's another person on here that knew him before, and that's Carol Flato. And what I was going to tell was the first, and of course, Judy Kasdan. What I was going to tell was the first day with Americans for a Safe Israel, Monday morning. This is what happened with Marc Provisor. I had no idea, didn't understand exactly about the Green Line or this or that. The West Bank, where it started, well, it's real close to Jerusalem, like you're still in the city, and technically it just gets crazy. I'm sorry Barbara Schwartz is not here, because Barbara was with us. Carol, you were there this time when we first started out, and we went to this hilltop, and it was a barren hilltop, and there was an old bus up there. There were little kids everywhere, just little children, and these people welcomed us so graciously. They lived inside the bus. They had a table set up. They had hot water. They had coffee. They had tea. They had fruit. They had cookies, and just, I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere, and they're trying to be so hospitable. So they're telling their story, and they had, I remember so distinctly, they were trying to grow cabbages and flowers on this top of a hilly, barren landscape. So they told their story, Marc, and then Marc said to the lady, Judy's mom, and our friend Helen Friedman of blessed memory. Helen Friedman changed my life, the people that she introduced me to, and knowing her. The next thing, Marc, I saw them talking, and Marc asked her if she wanted to go where the army had just destroyed a hilltop settlement. And of course, Helen said, yes. And we go to, we can only go so far, because all they had were rocks that they tried to put in front of the Army's vehicles. So we had to crawl over a few rocks. You couldn't drive the bus up there for sure. We get up there, there are, I think they call them flashbangs, all over the place. And I mean, people are like in shell shock. And there was this one gentleman, I remember, he he had just brought a young guy, a load of wood up from the lumber company, and he was working on his house for the second time, and they had destroyed his house. There was another fellow too that were going to just set their tents up not very far from there. They weren't quitting. Then we moved on to Etamar before lunch, and the horrible massacre of the Fogel family. We met Moshe Goldsmith, and then we went up to another hilltop settlement that was behind Etamar that the Czar family had started in defiance of. It was in between Awarta and Etamar, and there were 5 or 6 boys up there, and our Helen had arranged for us to have lunch with them in this hilltop settlement, and they were building a synagogue, a little teeny synagogue that was about halfway built. And one of the best, my most treasured pictures is my grandson took a picture of me standing under a bed sheet on like a 2x4 with the Star of David on it. So that is what it's like to be with Marc Provisor before lunch.
I remember that day well.
Well, Marc, I'll just have to add this. Marc's become such a good friend, and he's been to Texas. I think you've been here 3 times, stayed with us, and we thoroughly enjoyed every time.
Thank God.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Ann, for sharing that. I just have to say before I introduce Marc, and probably we'll get into a lot more of this down the line in this interview, but we've talked now for months about Judea and Samaria, the Green Line, the West Bank. And if you're watching this now, or if you're watching this as a recording on our YouTube channel, you should have a glimpse of what is significant about Judea and Samaria, because we have had many speakers that talk about this topic, and Marc is certainly going to share more about this very special part of Israel. So let's get started. Let me add to what Ann said about Marc and who he is and what he does. So Marc Provisor, to put it bluntly, he is a leader in Israel's counterterrorism strategic work, is what I'm paraphrasing, but I'm going to share more specifically with you. If you've ever seen the movie Fauda, the Netflix series on Fauda, Marc Provisor is Fauda. He's the original Fauda. They based it off of Marc's life. Okay, that's what they did. So Marc Provisor, he is a security expert from Israel's Shiloh region, and he currently serves as security projects director for One Israel Fund and a security consultant in the field of counterterror. His primary focus is counter-terror mitigation and emergency response for the communities in the region of Judea and Samaria and the Gazan border communities. He served as an elite paratrooper in an elite paratrooper unit and intel position in the IDF. He was personally involved in combating terrorist attacks at ground level on a daily basis as the Chief Army Security Coordinator from 1996 to 2006. And he's considered to have been involved in more actual terror attacks than most in his field. There's so much about Marc. In the course of his work, Marc defended the area against numerous attacks and was responsible for rescuing scores of Jews under terrorist threat. He was instrumental in increasing the level of security in the area and involved in the capture of terrorists. Here's something very unique. His counter-terror skills earned him recognition from the Israeli security establishment, including the Award of Excellence and Valor and the IDF Central Command General, along with being recognized by the Israeli government. He's also provided and continues to counsel various government agencies in Israel and around the world in the field of homeland security, and continues to lecture and consult on various security and counter-terror issues facing security professionals today. There's more to Marc. Marc has a unique experience in his personal life. It's professional as well, but it's something very unique that we're going to talk about in just a second. I want to continue on about his work in counterterrorism. He specializes and focuses on the Judea and Samaria region, which is Israel's heartland and the southern Gaza border, and in Israel generally. He includes links to both Jewish life in and out of Israel and America and the related fields of security in both places. His talks have been known to bring a unique perspective to many, as they often provide a view and perspective not seen by most. He knows what's happening behind the scenes, guys. But here's another thing about Marc. If you will notice Marc's background, it's a landscape of a part of Israel. Marc is a world-renowned artist. In fact, he's in New York City right now, working with some galleries that have his art in their galleries. Let me share with you about Marc's art. In case you don't know, we're gonna follow up on that. So give me 1 second. Okay, Marc's art, he does all kinds of art, but in order to make a living, most artists teach or work in design or another profession within the realm of art. But Marc's work, he works at preventing terrorism, right? So the security expert and the artist are not split identities. I thought this was so fascinating. You know, he's a security expert in the world's most, I guess, intense region, but he's also a world-class artist. How do those two go together? Well, it's that very part of him as an artist that helps him be successful in counterterrorism. So I want Marc to explain more about that as we begin to talk. So, okay, welcome, Marc. We're so glad to have you. This is a unique guest to have. You're so unique in all that your experience and your background. Let's just start with this. Let me ask you my first question, which
Sure.
is, how in the world did you go to an elite New York City artist, move to Israel, and become a lead director in Israel's security counterterrorism? How did this happen?
Well, the order was I moved to Israel when I was 15.
Okay.
When I was 18, I was drafted like most Israelis. And that's when I served in the paratroopers. And towards the end, that was during 1981 to 84, which was the Lebanon War. Towards the end of that period is when I transferred to working with intelligence, undercover, all that sort of things. It was still brand new. They weren't making movies out of it and so on. No cell phones. Interesting time. But it was during the Lebanon War, actually, that there was a particular rough attack on us. And I remember getting home. Now, a lot of guys coming back from a war, they're either going to get drunk or they're going to get stoned or something. And for me, that it just simply didn't work. And my friend gives me a little watercolor kit, and I started painting. I had no experience, but I just started putting down what I went through, and it relaxed me. It was my way of it just helped me to express myself.
Wow. So
towards the end, I get out of the army, and I took my little trip. I ended up going to the States that time, after going through Europe a little bit. That was the whole thing with Israel. You know, soldiers get out, they like to take their trip. And I started studying business and marketing and all sorts of stuff. And one of my classes got canceled. And so I decided, let me take a painting course. And I loved it. It spoke to me, something incredible. I dropped all the business, everything, went fine arts. My mother was living in Tel Aviv back then, and she asked what's going on. I said, well, now I'm a fine arts major. And she was in New York within 3 days of that phone call, and trying to convince, say, like, what do you don't do it. But she and my father both gave me support with that. And I actually started succeeding as a young artist in New York, which was something.
Wow.
Along comes the Iraqi war, and I just couldn't stay away. It just, I had a few pieces in a museum back then, a show going on, and I just picked up and went back home. I just couldn't do it. So whatever, got back to Israel, life goes on. And eventually the mayor moved out to Shiloh, the mayor of Shiloh. So he knew I liked to paint. I had a little studio and I would do my thing. I was working a regular day job because I remember, you know, artists, sometimes you make money, sometimes you don't. And I didn't want my kids growing up on rice. So he comes to me and he says, I know a bit about your background. Why don't you take over our security? He said, it'll be 2 hours a day maximum. You'll get the studio for free. I didn't even check out the job. I heard free studio and the possibility of getting back to the art, and I jumped. It was not 2 hours a day. It was a lot more. And basically, eventually, the area started getting a lot more hostile. And I guess you could say the security side in me started coming back. And we've also heard that experience is the best professor, the best teacher. And my experiences, they were professors. So it just developed as it's like hitting the ground hard, but thank God I was able to learn a lot. And during that time of the Intifada from the year 2000, 2006, dealing with a lot of terror every day. And I can only be thankful, thank God that it developed. And I guess maybe the artist in me had part of it as seeing things outside the box. And I got good at it, more or less. A couple of years there, I served as that position for about 10 years. And eventually, One Israel Fund, who I had met as a security chief, they were taking part in security issues in the communities, and being one of the few English-speaking security chiefs. So I became the natural target for groups coming in. And like I said, about 2 years after I left that position, they called me up and asked if I would work with their security projects. It was supposed to be a little contract. I was doing consulting on counterterror, all sorts of places in the world. And so I took it, and I was able to use my experience, my operational experience, and to put it to good, which is, I think is an important issue, because when a lot of people, we hear everyone saying PTSD, it seems like everyone and their mother's got some sort of PTSD nowadays. But that what comes from combat and from terror is a very different thing. And I was able now to use that in a sense for the good, to bring about better results. And thank God it just blossomed from there. And
amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
That's what I've been doing.
Well, this kind of is a great segue into my next question, because you once told us that you were offered a very high-paying job here in the U.S. that was security related, but you turned it down so that you could work in Judea and Samaria. Why this choice?
I must have been hallucinating that day, but otherwise, I like living where I do. It's home to me. I was actually offered a couple of positions. I was offered to go to Afghanistan and Iraq for a while for a lot of money. But my family basically said, you've been going through this for so long, you give us a break now. We don't have to go there. And the States, I'm able to accomplish a lot and change scenarios. And it has a personal meaning, a personal touch. It's like when people see, I can connect the art to, when people see various of my drawings, sketches, or paintings of the land, these are places that I go, and it's very, I feel very connected. I feel very connected, and money's not everything. It just isn't. And so I turned it down.
Well, this speaks volumes, because not only is it your home, but you are the reason that Judea and Samaria is so secure as it is.
I'll trust in the boss. Maybe I'm just one of his messenger boys,
I think you're his lead messenger. The little bit I know about you, Marc, what you are doing for Judea and Samaria security is just unbelievable, really. I mean, the technology, and that's what I want to get to just a little bit about what has contributed to your success as the security director for that region. But before we go there, I want to go back a little bit. And like I said earlier on in this particular episode, in recent months, our audience has been briefly taught about Judea and Samaria, also known as the West Bank, also areas A, B, and C.
Yeah.
But I'd like for you to take a minute and just kind of expand their understanding on those territories and the complexities that go with that. And then I want to go to your success and what has contributed to that.
All right. So once we go over the Green Line, which is actually the 1949 armistice line that was formed due to Oslo, the Oslo agreements, which in my mind are a total failure. The areas were divided up into areas A, B, and C. A being under, I don't like really using the word Palestinian, but I will just so people can get a grasp, as under Palestinian municipality and security. B is under Israeli security and Palestinian Authority and municipality. And C is both under Israeli security and municipal judges. But those, I wouldn't say that, whereas still the areas apply, we're still seeing a lot less Israeli security within those areas, though the IDF will go in wherever they feel that they need to be to capture terrorists and so on, which makes things, still brings up a lot of tension now. There are a lot of Jews who feel that we can build freely in Area C, not always according to the law, but they will go out there. The areas are right now, it's, in a sense, it's very tense and still very obscured, I'd have to say. So there is a lot going on. There's a lot of illegal building going on also by the Arabs in Area C, which threatens a possible sovereignty plan. It's much more complex than people realize.
Okay.
And that in itself is like a whole 2-hour session of really things that are going on behind the scenes and everything, which is not being presented in the press, or for that matter, by a lot of the the hordes of Israelis coming here and talking. There's a lot more to it.
Okay. So one of those, because of the complexities, things of like illegal buildings going up by the Palestinians in areas they should not be, building homes, and they don't even vacate. They don't live in them. They're empty. A lot of them. It poses a threat to security of Jewish people trying to build their Jewish communities in these areas. Like you said, it becomes a sovereignty issue for the peace. But the safety is what I want to hone in on for a second. The safety of the Judea and Samaria region that you work in. I want to do a comparison real quick. Personally, and I would feel comfortable assuming that people on this call right now, or some people watching this recording, could probably say the same thing that I'm about to say, which is, I personally have had many people tell me, Americans, tell me that they just not quite ready to go to Israel because it's just not safe. And they don't feel safe going because they've heard this or that or whatever. And so they don't feel safe going to Israel. Despite what I tell them and show them and prove to them, aside from actually going, they still believe that America is safer than going to Israel. Compared to the US, how safe is Israel, Marc?
I'm looking at if I have to look at the recent events in the last year, and I look at the crime that's going up here. I mean, I'm sitting in New York City, and people who know me said this is not the same place you were pre-COVID. The crime that is happening is insane. It's insane. I mean, when if we're just to measure with numbers, and and you can take some of the larger cities in the U.S., there's a lot of murder going on. Now, that's not happening in Israel. It's not happening in Judea and Samaria. It's a simple fact. I mean, we have a different dynamic. Maybe we are under a different type of threat, but it is not more dangerous. And besides the fact that in Israel, we adapt to that danger. I mean, our buses, unfortunately, are bulletproof. Again, it depends where you're going, but it's not like the U.S. cities. The U.S. Let me tell you something. I mean, I'm very sensitive to security and so on. I prepared myself for being in this situation, and I feel a lot more in danger here. And I know the streets, but I'm expressing a lot more cautiousness here than I would in the state, back home. Of course, I'm not carrying here or whatever, but I find myself, my situational awareness being much more heightened here because it's got a lot of lunatics out on the street, honestly, and that you don't necessarily see in Israel.
Wow, that's amazing. I just want to add to something someone told me once that made such a great comparison is that when you're in Israel, the airport being Gurion in Tel Aviv, you can't just drive up to the drop off your passenger for them to catch a flight. You have to go through checkpoints to get to the, to the terminal. However, here I'm in Austin, I could drive up to the drop off to the terminal, to the curb and drop someone off and drop off a backpack and leave it on the curb and drive off. I mean, I just could, there's no checkpoint. I mean, for me, in my mind, that's just a quick comparison of just going to the airport in the two countries, one safer than the other. Clearly, Israel is much safer because of what you said. You guys know how to adapt to the challenges and you are experts at it. And you don't leave anything to happenstance. I mean, it's just incredible, the security.
It's very interesting what you're saying, first of all. Now, the airport dynamics is different. I mean, the amount of people flying into the major American airports needs a different solution than what's in Israel. But the point, Israelis recognize the need for security and do not take it as being offending their personal rights. Where here in the States, you stop, all of a sudden people start freaking out. Wait, what are you doing? I have my freedom. So on. Israelis recognize the need for security because they want to stay alive. They have experienced this and so on. And it really affects, I mean, I've had to deal with this. I mean, I still do consulting in various places in the States. And I listen to these people on the way they're saying it. And I said, what would you rather have? Would you rather be dead or alive? And everyone's saying alive. I say, well, okay, now we have a possible situation. How much of the rights of someone else are you willing to impede upon to keep you and your family alive? And then people start looking at it a little differently. So it's Israelis understand the threat and therefore are able to accept. Look, when I drive into Jerusalem or outside, if I'm heading toward Tel Aviv, I hit roadblocks and everything. And you know what? It's part of life. I mean, they're doing their job, and I appreciate it. That is a big difference. I watch what's going on, the defund the police and all these things happening here. I understand there are problems. I noticed that I actually think there are problems in various towns and so on. But the concept to take away jobs from people who spend their lives 24/7 protecting society, Israelis can't understand that.
Neither can some of us Americans.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no words for this insanity. There's no words for this.
Definitely not.
I have a couple more questions before I get to your art, but I just want to it's so important. And we don't ever have anybody as special as you. You are the guide for Judea and Samaria. So we really want to ask as many questions as we can. And I want to have time for Q&A at the end. Back to this, the way Israel is divided into three areas, A, B, and C. Back to that.
Judea and Samaria.
Judea and Samaria only, thank you. A, B, and C. So area C is where the Jews and some of the Arabs have, build their communities. Okay. Many of us on this call and possibly watching the recording have visited places in Judea and Samaria, which for me, that's one of my favorite areas to go to. We visited Shiloh, some of us have been to Itamar, Har Bracha, and many of these other Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. However, we often hear the terms settler or settlement as being used like negative, in a negative way when referring to the Jewish community. Why, help our audience understand why people tend to use this in a negative way? What is it about the term settlement and settlers being negative?
I think the words become a victim of the media. When we translate it from Hebrew, it is not a bad thing. But because the way the word, you have to remember when you're hearing the word settler being used in the media, they're projecting, let's say, on especially with Judea and Samaria, and with all the, these ridiculous concepts of that we are occupying our own land and so on, and we're stealing and so on. And so they like to apply that settler. Now, settler, they also apply to any Jew that expresses self-determination. Now, I remember when you see things with the mosque, Al-Aqsa, they say settlers storming. Oh, wait a second. Who's a settler and who's not? Now, in the Arab mindset, and this is a problem, the Arabs consider the majority of Israel as settlers. I mean, I work along the Gazan border, and they're calling them settlers. I work along the Lebanese border, they're settlers. So in the Arab mind, any Jew coming into his land is a settler. Any Jew following the commandment that is explicitly written in the Torah is a settler, because also in Hebrew it says liyashiv, to settle the land. So world media has decided to make that into a bad word, and it even asked the people who are going out on advocacy lectures to use the word communities, which is proper in one sense. But I've always said, when people, when they call me a settler, I'm pretty proud of it, because what is a settler? Besides it's someone who is exercising his self-determination, what have these settlements done? You took a land, now, from 1967, when this place was barren, it took about, first settlements started coming up around 1977, 78. Today, that's over 800,000 people. That is businesses. That is taking land and turning it from being desolate into producing. It is talking about businesses. There is so much that is added to this world by these settlers. All right, and that's one thing. If we look at the way the world, it's very interesting. As everyone loves to come down on Israel and so on. Find me a country, maybe this is my Israeli arrogance, that has done so much for humanity. For humanity, they don't speak about Israel. My God, we have companies going down to Africa and making water out of air.
Yes.
Right? I mean, these are those nasty Jews in Israel who are stealing the land. We have, besides the medical, the progress in the medical field that we're bringing in every field.
Yes.
Those nasty. Well, let me tell you something. If I take a simple mathematical equation and I say Jew plus being in his land equals, well, that's a big positive.
Yes.
And I can simply look at it and say Arab, and I am not an Islamophobic or whatever, but Arab in Judea and Samaria equals something negative.
Yes.
And that's a simple fact.
Yes.
So when everyone loves to ignore the good. Are we perfect? Far from it.
Right.
Far from it. Is there bad things happening amongst the settlements in Judea and Samaria? Sure, absolutely. No one is perfect. Right. But if they want to go side by side, you want to put a graph as to who's producing what, we come out on top.
Oh, Marc, nobody can keep up with Israel. And I've said this before. If I was the leader of a country, I would be knocking on Israel's door to do business with Israel, because you guys are incredibly making the world a better place. Like you were just mentioning, medical, agriculture. I mean, our cell phones, our computers. Yes. Yes.
My God, we're adding so much to America's own security. Yes. It's ridiculous. And people don't want to think about that. So, I mean, it's funny that, we mentioned this, because I'll segue it into the art a little bit. The exhibition that I'm taking part in is in Warsaw, Poland.
Okay.
And it has to do with people who would be considered controversial artists. And me just being who I am, I'm considered controversial. Okay. I'm not the only artist. There are a number of Muslims there who are making works of art, who have come out against the treatment that Islam puts on their own people. They're just regular people. They're just expressing themselves. I've been already told now that there might be a little ambush set up for me. And they spoke to me. They said, well, you have a problem if people, want to get in your face. And I said, bring it on. I said, because I can really discuss this. I don't have a problem mentioning our faults and so on, but they want to bring it straight up. Go ahead. And it's that thing that I don't think that we are addressing strong enough. We are not focusing on these people, on these boycott things, and what's going on the campuses. So, right. And I think that we must.
I
We
agree.
must.
I
Time
agree.
to put it in their face.
I agree. I agree. That's the response, right? This is the response. It's got to be bold. It's got to be direct. I agree. I'm just I'm an outsider saying that, just the little bit that I've learned, over the years.
What
So
works?
I can imagine. So let's go. Let's go to your art now. Tell us about your art and tell us why this makes you a better security intel person.
So it's kind of funny. The way I come up with a solution, I guess I would be called a little unorthodox in the security world. In art and painting and drawing, we compose a picture. We take different parts, whether it be nature, concepts, whatever, and we put these things together to create, hopefully, a decent piece of art. When I look at a security threat, first of all, I don't like it being on the paper. I'm sort of a hands-on guy. I like to get out there in the field. I like to feel the dirt. I like to smell the flowers. And I start putting together a composition, which then in turn I'll come up for it with an idea with what I want to be, and then I can go into various technologies and I start picking stuff off the shelves, and then they get their engineers to pretty much make what I want. So I see things differently. It's definitely not black and white in my eyes. I look at all angles. I look at the things that are considered what they call positive, negative space. I see my enemy's narrative and respect my enemy's narrative, which is something important that a lot of people don't do. And I'm able to come up with solutions. And I'll just a short little anecdote. A little while back, we had a woman who was murdered while up jogging in the northern Samaria. And so I was called in. The army had their hands tied in some things, and that's when I get called in. So I'm out there walking on the field and going on the path where it happened, and I stop and I just close my eyes and I start moving my hands around, and these guys really didn't know me too well. My oldest son was with me, and I'm listening to the coyotes. I'm listening to where the wind. It's what I do. Mm. And one of them is in the back says, like, what the hell is he doing? And the other security director of northern Samaria, he says, no, just wait. It's his way. We don't get it. So I get back to my studio and I created a painting of the incident and came up with the solution basically on that, because I'm putting all these different things together. So I'm telling them, I'm saying, I hear the coyotes here. I know that means that if they're there, they're not afraid of something. So it means a possible terrorist is also not afraid of it. I'm just bringing in things and they're looking at it like I came from another planet at first. And then I like drinking coffee out in the field. And so we're sitting down and they're like, wow, okay, we didn't think about that. So my solutions that I'm able to come up with they're a little out of the box, but it's thank God it has been working.
Wow.
That's when I get called in,
That's amazing.
To prevent mostly.
Prevention. Okay.
I like to prevent violence. That's my thing. I don't like people dying. I don't care where they're from, what they're about. I do not like people dying. Wow. And if there's something that I had my trauma, if you will, if I took from being a kid in war and going through the Intifada and all the terrorism, I don't like death. I don't. I'll deal with death, but I do not like murder, and I just don't like it. Wow. So this gives me my motivation to do what I do.
Wow. So the way it works is then your art, your expertise as an artist allows you to see things differently, to come up with solutions in a very, like you said, unorthodox way, as you put all the pieces together. That's so incredibly interesting. And what an incredible view you have of the world and the worlds that you live in and work in. So incredible. I want to open this up now for a Q&A session, and I have a question about your art, but I'll go last because someone else may have the same question, and I want to give them the opportunity. So friends that are with us today, let me change a view real quick and see who has a hand up, who wants to ask a question or a comment. All right, Ari, hey friend from California, you can unmute yourself. What's your question?
Shalom from California.
Which part? It's a big space. Which part? It's a big place.
Hello, San Francisco. I'm on the coastline here in Watsonville. But yeah, so 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 a lot of us, we feel when the heartland is being hurt, we are hurt ourselves, and we try to do our best to support, we're against any two-state solution and whatnot. And so, we feel our obligation to go back to Israel, especially these lands, to to protect the heartland and also the Jewish people. We're all connected. But my question is the political landscapes have recently changed with our government and also in Israel. And do you feel like the threats there have increased in the heartland since those changes happened, or what?
No,
Yeah.
I think the threat continues pretty much the same. I mean, the goal of the Arabs, well, let me say the goal of the Palestinians. Here I'm going to use the word Palestinians because we're watching with these Abrahamic Accords. You're seeing a lot of Arab nations are saying the fact that Israel exists is good for us and they have a chance to better themselves. So the goal of the major Palestinian government, and whether you want to say PLO or Hamas, it really doesn't matter, is they want to erase Israel. And that threat has always been the same. Where it has been growing is basically only because of the current U.S. administration. And I'll explain. For so many years, there has never been so much support for the Palestinian narrative as there is now, and so much going against the Israeli concept, which is a problem. And I mean, you're seeing it, this whole concept that we're watching demonstrations where people are saying intifada and all this. I mean, mostly obviously in the cities. It's just by them giving support. And I listen into their conversations in various social media and everything. And they are supplying motivation and, incitement for the Arabs to actually do things. There are a number of terror attacks that have happened in the last few months, or attempted. Sorry, you're not getting all the reports, obviously, where people are motivated from the outside, from areas that they don't live in, California, even, and it affects the reality on the ground. The current Israeli government is doing pretty good with security, and I'd have to say it's doing a little bit better only because it is not an explicit right-wing government. Most right-wing governments have to show restraint, whereas left-wing governments have to prove themselves that they're more security-based. So it's an interesting balance we're seeing, but it's and I'm not expressing any political opinions on the American administrations. I really stay clear of that. Under Trump, we could have brought more peace. It's very simple. The PLO, they didn't know what to do. They were about to, they solved their problems. The Biden administration came in with the various squad members and so on, and they said, well, we're just going to sit and they're going to do the job for us instead of they're going to hurt Israel more than anybody. And that's a very strong possibility. But the one thing I can tell, well, Joe, I don't think he really understands English anymore, but we're very strong people. We're very strong people. And has nothing to do with I don't believe any U.S. administration they may hurt us a little bit, but we're pretty resilient. Sure.
Thank you, Ari, for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, wonderful question. I want to just add to that before I speak to someone here on this call. I just want to say this is one of the things that inspires me most about you Israelis is your strength and your steadfastness of being a peoplehood. I mean, there is no one more inspiring than the Israeli Jewish people. I mean, the greatest comeback kid story of mankind's history. I mean, there is no one else that can hold a candle to you guys, okay? No one. And I love that about you guys. Okay, I want to now say hello to Judy Kasdan. Hi, Judy. How are you? Judy is here with us. Judy is the director of Americans for a Safe Israel. And I want Judy to share with us, and of course, Ann Stacy is the Texas branch of that. Ann has Texans for a Safe Israel, working hand in hand with Judy and her organization. Judy, please tell us why, when you bring groups to Israel, you always, non-negotiable, you have a day with Marc Provisor. Tell us more about this.
She's going to embarrass me. Wait, it's not fair.
Hi, everybody. I just last minute popped into this meeting. And you know, our whole group, everybody who travels with us and people who come to meetings in New York and all over the country to meet with Marc are always impressed. And it's not just his art, but it's his way of, certainly on our trips, he always finds an interesting new scenario to show us. There's always, he's taken us to the northern border. He's taken us, we've made friends actually in the Gaza envelope, places that we would never ordinarily have access to. We have now become regulars. And it's a very, very special thing to get to see the inside workings of how a security chief tries to protect his community, how a security director assists. We've seen Marc do assessments. We've seen him fulfill the assessments. And one of the most fulfilling things for us is when we can work with him and raise funds to work together on fulfilling some of those needs.
Wow.
So that's really, really special. So it's most of the time we've done it in Judea, Samaria. We've done it in the what's the name of the region where Keith is? In the
Border, the Eshkol region.
The Eshkol region in the Gaza area. And it's just, you know, we call our missions chizuk missions, which means strength. And the idea is that we are coming to bring strength to people who have been in difficult situations and need it. But the truth is, every time, and Anne can attest to this, we come away feeling so invigorated and strengthened ourselves, because we see the heroes and heroines who are holding on to the heartland of Israel, who are putting their lives on the line on a daily basis, and to be able to help them either financially or just with, just by uplifting them and letting them know that we're there and we care is a tremendous rush, if that's a word I can use, for I think the people on our trip. Carol, do you have anything to add to that? Carol is our South Florida chapter chair.
Carol, you're muted. Unmute yourself. You're still muted. There you go. Okay.
I have to make sure the chicken doesn't drown me, my rooster doesn't drown me out.
It's okay. I got nieces here today, so okay.
I think Judy hit the nail on the head that we come away with much more physics than we give. Marc has been to Miami several times, always gives a very good presentation as well. So I've never seen his art, but I'm just wondering if he has the same gallery as Hunter Biden. Maybe that'll bring in some a cash infusion.
Well
The
done.
same price range too.
Right here.
Amen.
So thank you, Judy, for sharing that. I know Anne has spoken. I've lost track of how many times Anne has said, when you go to Israel, you must go have a date with Marc Provisor. You just must. It will change your life. And this is so unique because not many groups go and see the places that Anne has seen. I know Christian groups certainly don't do it. And they have no idea what all the fuss is about for Judea and Samaria because they don't understand it, because they don't go. And I remember Judy and Thomas, who are on this call now, all my friends in Sweden, when I first met you guys on our trip that year, we were supposed to go to Itamar and we couldn't because of an incident. And so I remember how disappointed y'all were because y'all wanted to go to Itamar. And so these are unique places. And so I think Anne has just hit the jackpot early on in her trips to Israel. Yeah, to be able to go and meet Marc Provisor and see the projects that you're working on to keep the heartland safe. It's just an honor to have you, Marc. And Judy, thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for asking.
Yes. I know Mike and Ann have a comment, and I want to just be sure somebody asks about your artwork. So Ann, go ahead. What's your question or comment?
Well, I just want people, anybody that is, I think everybody probably on this already knows about Americans for a Safe Israel, but share it, share it, share it, because absolutely there is no other trip like this. I mean, you never know exactly, wouldn't you say this, Judy and Carol, where you're going to end up, Marc? If you have Marc with you, if something's going on, we just head that direction. And sometimes if we haven't seen the military or been questioned by the military, we don't think we've had a real successful trip.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. Thank you, Ann. Mike, do you have a question, my friend?
I just wanted to say hello to Judy. Hi, Judy.
Hey,
And
Mike.
good to see you. And Marc, you know, just yesterday or day before, there were some rockets from Lebanon.
Yeah.
I just wanted your opinion of what.
Cut off for a second.
Yeah, he's driving in the middle of nowhere. Mike, if you're still there, you might have to repeat this.
With Lebanon and your view on the Abraham Accord.
Okay, well, I'll answer to what I heard. My opinion on the rockets from Lebanon. I think that Hezbollah is testing. It's testing Israel right now. If we look at Lebanon, Lebanon is a country that's disintegrating before our eyes and so on. So this actually gives them an opportunity in a sense. If one of the byproducts of war is that it unifies. Now, if Lebanon, if these Hezbollah people continue to throw rockets, we do respond. And sometimes that can help unify the various areas of southern Lebanon. Of course, this is all being done as Hezbollah's an Iranian proxy. Now, that being said, we have seen a lot of the Druze and other people in Lebanon, in southern Lebanon, kicking out Hezbollah and saying, we do not want you to bring the Israelis against us. You know, that's the last thing in the sense they want. But they continue to test it out. There's some other issues that have been going on, various attempted infiltrations, things going. It is a source of, it is a spark that can ignite the entire region again. So we're watching it very clearly now. The amount of missiles that Hezbollah has is frightening. It's frightening. I think my son, who's more of a specialist on that area, it was like 150,000 rockets. And I don't mean these stupid little Qassams that they've been throwing up at us from Gaza. It could really lead to a major breakdown. Of course, once something like that would happen, I'm sure that Iran would join in for God knows what reason. God knows what reason Hezbollah wants to join. If you think about it, it's simply out of pure hatred. It is out of pure hatred. There's no territorial conflicts going on over there. It's something that is being watched very, very closely, because the one major problem that we have is things can ignite all over. Now, once something happens, it ignites another area. All of a sudden, you can feel, once the Arabs feel that they maybe have the upper hand, they all join in the party until we smack them down, God willing. But it causes death. It's a problem. So we're going to see the way Hezbollah reacts right now. They're having a lot of problems, pressure from the southern Lebanese themselves. And I believe it is in their interest. They would like to take over Lebanon, but that's probably not going to happen. They'd be thrown more into another civil war again. So we'll see.
Wow.
We are, mind you, working. It's funny, as soon as this thing happened. So actually, the place where AFSI went a while back, we took them, went right up to the border, looking into Lebanon. And the minute we started seeing some of the tensions go up, So we've already started assessing possibilities of needs that we might have to supply quicker, you know, just something we like to keep ahead on, you know?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important. It's very important. I think Mike had a follow-up question about your thoughts on the Abraham Accords.
Oh, I love them. I love them. I really do. I think it's not going to be as simple as it can be. I think if this administration, if Trump would have continued, I think we would have had a peace treaty with Saudi Arabia already at this point. I personally like it. I like the fact that the Arabs around the Gulf states are looking towards Israel. First of all, this didn't come out of nowhere. There's been connections going on for decades between business and development and so on. A lot of the Arabs in these Gulf regions, they simply looked at the Palestinians and said, well, we've been supporting you for so damn long. What have you achieved? And they see nothing. They said, all you're doing, and we're talking about the younger folk there, the regular people, if you will. They said, you're taking money from us and nothing's happened. You're not defeating Israel. You're only making things worse for yourself. You're using it for terror. And they said, you know what? Maybe we made a wrong move. And so it is interesting. Of course, they do have to deal with, they have a lot of issues there, but I've been invited to Dubai and to actually regarding the art, which has been kind of cool. But I'm looking forward for it to continue to develop. Look, a strong Israel, because we can and will defend ourselves, this is what will bring peace to the region. Because it makes them accept we're here. Now, you can either work with us or against us. Let's see what pays off more. And they've come to that realization that, you know what? Those people got a good thing going. They can only help us. And God willing, that's what we'll see.
Yes, amen, amen. Thank you, Mark. Okay, Anne, what's your comment or question?
Well, it's just a comment about Americans for a Safe Israel, a trip like none other. But, you know, I have been on other trips. People get off the bus, they get on the bus, and they don't leave anything to try to help. But I was with, Judy and I were with Mark at the Lebanese border. And Judy had worked very, very hard to, and Carol may have been a part of that too. Help me, the vest, bulletproof vest, which I think are about $1,000, $1,100. But Judy brought 10 of them.
Wow.
And, you know, I never once did I ever see Helen Friedman leave a place that she didn't leave a check. And Judy, I think I'm right about this, that she collected that money. Americans for Israel is rather small, that she collected that money from her friends and from herself, but she never went anywhere that she didn't leave a check. We've just a couple of things with Mark. One time he took us someplace where the guys, all his sheep were stolen. So we tried to help him with some sheep. Mark said we were going to go to this place, and they actually had a little lunch for us, and we tried to help him replace some of his sheep. It was that sort of stuff. But I'm telling you, it is a group. They become my very best friends, and like Mark. Oh, and now Texas, we have Texans that love Marc Provisor. We can't wait to come back. They've never been to Israel, but they love Marc Provisor.
I must be part Texan.
They think all Israelis are like Mark.
Oh, that's awesome. That's incredible. Well, you know, this is what's so important because, you know, I didn't get to one of my questions, but I'll just add a little thought about what you just said, Anne, about how would you go to these communities, these Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria that Mark devotes his life to keeping secure. You see communities that don't have anything hardly. I mean, their homes are destroyed by the terrorists, but they rebuild. Some of them live in, I don't know, these little structures. They put together some wood and put a roof that, I mean, a good wind comes through to blow it down, but they will not leave. They can live a much better life in Netanya or the Golan or the Beersheba area, but they choose to live in those conditions for a reason. Marc, what is that reason? Why do these people stay in the fight?
I'm trying to not make a joke about that, but
Like,
it really depends, first of all, on different places that you're talking about. Some of the newer communities are living in caravans, and that is the way a lot of these places start. Eventually, they will build their homes, and they'll develop into thriving, blossoming communities, which is something great to see. The wood shacks, that, you know, these makeshift little huts, there are two reasons that these go up. One, either in a direct response to whether it was an act of terror or something. A lot of times these are not being set up as legal, if you will, according to the government. Then there's the group of people that just, you know, they just say it's our God-given right to do this, and they go against the government. It is actually much more complicated than you see. Again, you're only getting part of the picture. Hate to tell it, but that's the way it is. You're not going to hear it from a lot of people. You know, if someone actually speaks a lot of truth about these places, he's going to be shunned. And as wonderful as it sounds, that they're out there settling God's land and everything, a lot of times there's another side to it. So the good ones are out there. They will start by saying, we're going to make something and do something. And this gets with backing of the regional council and a number of people. And these eventually, next thing you know, caravans are being put up. All of a sudden, small building, and it grows. Mentioned Shiloh, Itamar, this is the way they started. This is simply the way they started. On the other instances, you may find these places, and some of the kids there have gone through quite a bit of trauma, and this is sort of their expression. So both places are different, and again, it causes you will get mixed reactions in the Zionist camp, if you will.
right, I see.
Sometimes the truth hurts, but that's what, you know. But it is really, like I said, a lot of the communities you see today that you visited in, this is the way they start. And yeah, sometimes there are problems. Sometimes civil administration in Judea and Samaria is not the most friendliest towards the settlement industry, if you will. I would say they're outright hostile and unfair. And so this is why at times you'll see something will be destroyed, but it will be rebuilt and even stronger. And that's a resilience, again, of the people to connect to a land that is it's not political. Remember, it's personal. It's something very special that, you know, I was asked, why did I move to Shiloh? I didn't move there for ideological reasons. Personal. It was personal reasons. I simply went there for a Shabbat, and I saw these kids being called up to the Torah, and they were just finished their, just gotten out of their, either out of the army or finished their trip afterwards. I saw them with long hair. I saw them with earrings, some with short hair, all sorts of kids. And I saw strength and adherence to Jewish values, to Zionist values, to something, and just beautiful. I mean, watching these kids and listening to them, it was something mind-blowing. And I said, I want my kids to get that. And one of the real places that you get it is actually in Judea and Samaria. And if we look at a map, we're looking at, you know, when they say the heartland, that's one thing saying in the middle, but it is the beating heart of this. Now, if we go around Israeli society, a lot of these kids develop and evolve into their own personalities and so on. But you see sparks all over, wherever city you go, and all of a sudden, this kid's from here, this kid's from there, and it's very nice. It's a rejuvenation of that strength being also spread out into the rest of the country, which I find wonderful. And that's one of the major reasons I think it's so important. Again, I'm not going to talk about, you know, there's so many different opinions.
Yeah.
You get a few Jews together about Israel, and you'll have many more opinions than you have the amount of Jews. But I see a lot of good. There's a lot of good that's being put out, and it's just nice to see.
I agree. As a non-Jew on the outlook or looking in to what's going on, what you just said, it is so incredibly inspiring. I am cheering these young people on. They are the future of that country, and it's just so inspiring. So let's end with your art. Tell us, Marc, where can we find your art? When are you going to come to Texas and have an art show?
As soon as you tell me.
Okay, we'll be back.
My art is primarily online right now. There's a website. It's called Marc Pro Art, MARCPRO Art. I have to update the website. Instagram. That's the way since COVID is happening. There's been most of it's been digital, and it's funny. I've sold about 12 paintings in the past couple months, which is great.
Yeah.
And I only know 2 of the people. So
wow, that's great. Congratulations.
people are finding it. Been getting a few commissions. The gallery's doing right now digital. I'll have the one in New York. I'll put some pieces in probably later in the year. So it's basically people getting directly in touch with me at this point. Getting back into the art world is a new experience. It's not what it was so many years ago. So
wow.
It's interesting. And again, and I'm controversial, right?
Yeah,
you know?
right. Well,
Judy, weren't you with me when we went to that gallery? We went to a gallery, and the guy says, he says, "What's so special about you?" I said, "Well," I said, and please, I mean, no offense to anyone. I said, "I'm white, I'm straight, and I'm not politically correct." And he said, "You are unique." And
Yes.
so in the art world, that's a little difficult. And I know I'm going to.
Unusual.
Well, I know I'm going to have problems with various galleries with all that, but that's their loss, the way I view it.
That's right. That's right.
So it's mostly being in direct touch with me, I guess, following what I put up on either Facebook or Instagram.
Okay.
My art's varied. What's that?
Repeat your Instagram handle one more time.
I think the Instagram is Marc M Pro, MARCMPRO.
Okay.
And the Marc Pro Art would be on the web, marcproart.com. And you can
Marc
see
with the C, Marc, M-A-R-C.
With the C, yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different types. Yeah.
I don't think you mentioned that what's behind you, your
Tell us about
background.
Oh, so I did a series. So that little pyramid right over there, that's called the Sartaba. It's in the Jordan Valley. And I did a series of about 4 of these paintings, each from a different view and a different time and day. Thank God all 4 were sold. And I sell prints also. I mean, I actually, after I make one of the paintings, I take it in for what the very high quality print. And it's just an area. I love the desert. I mean, yeah, I love the desert. And I love the area I'm in, which I painted a lot of times. So you'll see varied landscapes, and some of the pieces are really large also. And it's my passion. I wake up, I get to my studio about 5, 6 every morning. I can spend 6, 7 hours. I'll tell you, here's a funny little story what happens. So I started going a little bit less out into the field as my son's working with me now. So because eventually I do plan on leaving the security world and just going back to painting. So a lot of the very high-ranking IDF officials and all those Fauda types, so they started coming and visiting the studio. Now, originally I thought, I said, okay, I guess they want to come here and discuss security situation. And they're like, so they'll come in, sit down, and they say, no, we just want some coffee. We like the music you're playing. We get a chance to discuss art. And the people in Shiloh, they start seeing all these types. They have no idea what's going on in my studio. They think it must be the second Pentagon at this point. And then there was a really nice story. Some of the guys who work kind of undercover, so they visit me now and then, and they saw some of my dark paintings. I do still express some of the things that I've gone through the paintings. Now these guys are as tough as you can imagine. I mean, they're ridiculous. One of the guy breaks down and starts crying, and I said, what are you doing? And he's looking at one particular painting, says, I remember I was at that incident with you, and this, he said, you're presenting our side. We can never talk about it, and you're showing it visually. And he just, it was wild. And it made me feel good to be able to do that, because security, there's a side that people will never hear about. And you know, out in the social media world, you're hearing people getting up and giving their speeches and their lectures, and they're all for the stuff and whatever. And it's great, and they're informing people. But there is a bunch of unsung heroes that they don't talk. And I mean, I feel privileged as to actually have been one of them, and to understand their side.
That's right.
And there's an Israel that a lot of people don't get to see. I mean, I got to say, if there's one informative trip, AFSI is probably the best. And one of the nice things that I've always enjoyed on the trips that I've taken part in is introducing some of these people to it. Again, these aren't the guys who are out there making films and rah-rah this and so on. These are guys with, and the reason they don't do it, because it's all heart. It's all heart. These are brick and mortar people. Yeah. You know, wow.
Yeah.
They're just so special.
Wow.
And
Mark, hey,
privilege.
I'd like to say your artwork looks way better than anything Hunter Biden could ever make.
Of course.
If I get, I should only be privileged to get the prices that he's getting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. Well, guys, I just want you to know that we, Mark, we speak directly to you and just say again, what you just said is, we feel that way about you and about what you are doing. You guys are the real deal. There is no.
It's a team. It's a team. It is a team. It is people. It is not just me. I mean, I thank everyone for the compliment and so on. It is not just me. It is a team of guys. It is a team of people around the world. You look, we're sitting here. We got 10 people sitting on this call. That is a team. It is. I look at AFSI. I look at the Texans for Israel. Texans for a safer people. It is a team, and by working together, this is the composition. These are the ingredients to make a great result. It's all like that, and the beauty of it.
Wow, it is beautiful. Thank you. I feel privileged to be on this little call and just have a glimpse into what you do. And I can't wait for us to be able to go back to Israel, because I will have a day with you. I will follow you. I just feel like a day with you will be the biggest adventure of my life. I just can sense it already.
And who knows, maybe in October you get to see me in Texas.
Oh,
Right, Ann?
yes, God willing. And I'll just go ahead and invite him to your house and for you. That's okay.
You don't have to invite me to
California.
Ann's house. Ann's house is like a home.
Yeah.
Come to California. We need support over here.
Ari would have you over there too. Well,
Yeah.
guys, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, Mark. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you on our show here at Just Among Friends. Friends, thank you for joining us. If you're watching this recording, thank you for watching. Please share, and please join us again next week for our next speaker. And everybody have a great day. Thank you so much, guys.
Bye-bye.
Friends. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Mark.
Bye, Mark.
See you all
Bye.
soon.
Okay.